Welcome to an overview of the Team-Initiated Problem-Solving Fidelity Checklist, or the TIPS FC. This is a tool that teams and coaches can use to check the level of implementation of team-initiated problem-solving to make sure we're following a logical, effective, and efficient and thorough process to reach problem resolutions. Just as a quick overview of TIPS, we know that team-initiated problem-solving is built on the foundation of effective and efficient meetings. We know that data drive each step of our process, with us first taking time to identify the problem with precision. We then move on to say, when will this problem no longer be considered a problem, or what is our goal? We then use this information to identify solutions and a plan for gathering data, both fidelity and outcome data, so that we can then compare our outcome data to our goal to ask the question of whether the problem has been solved, and then continue to use these data to inform our next steps of problem resolution. The TIPS Fidelity Checklist is available in a Word document as we're looking at now. It's also available in an Excel spreadsheet, and eventually will be available up on PBS apps. We're going to work right now from the Word document that you see. The TIPS Fidelity Checklist has 18 items that are distributed across two subscales. The first one is Meeting Foundations. Our second one documents the processes and procedures and behaviors observed with problem solving. Let's take a look first at the items within the Meeting Foundations. Let's start taking a look at some of these items. Again, here is the Word document of the TIPS FC. We have demographic information across the top. Then we're broken into several columns, with first our items, data sources we can use to document our responses, scoring criterions, again rated from a 0 to 1 or 2, with 0 pretty much reflecting processes or behaviors that have not quite started yet. A score of 1 is that these are partially in place, with a score of 2 reflecting full implementation. And then on the Word document and also in our Excel sheet, we have areas for us to list the date of the meeting and enter our scores. Let's begin by looking at item 1 on the TIPS Fidelity Checklist within the Meeting Foundation subscale. Item 1 states primary and backup individuals are assigned to define roles and responsibilities of facilitator, minute taker, and data analyst. And if you remember on our TIPS teams, these are the specific roles that we have. We also have references and resources if you need to look at the specific roles with responsibilities that are defined before, during, and after the meeting. When we're looking to define the score on this item, we can look at our meeting minutes form. We can also look at our problem-solving team roster to see if we have individuals assigned to all these roles and the backups. The scoring again goes from 0 to 1 to 2. A 0 reflects that there's no one assigned to any of the primary roles or backup roles. A score of 1 will reflect that some of those primary and backup roles are assigned to individuals on the team. And a score of 2 is full implementation, and that means that individuals are assigned to all primary and backup roles. Now take a minute, pause this video if you need to, and score this item on your TIPS FC. Item number 2 reflects the ability for the team meeting participants to be able to implement whatever solutions they identify as appropriate for the problems that they are discussing. A score of 0 is going to reflect that they do not have that ability. In other words, they may have to go and seek authority outside of the team representation to ask whether this is an appropriate solution to put in place. A score of 1 says that they have authority to develop the plan, but they will not be able to implement without someone giving it its final okay. And a score of 2 reflects that the team members have the ability to both develop and implement whatever solutions they identify as appropriate for a problem resolution. Now pause this video and score this item. Now let's look at item number 3. This reflects whether your meeting starts on time. We can look at our TIPS meeting minutes form to see when we're supposed to be starting. We have a general threshold of 10 minutes. So a score of 0 is going to reflect that your meetings are starting more than 10 minutes beyond the time, the official start time of your meeting. A score of 1 reflects that it's inside that 10-minute window, and a score of 2 is going to reflect that your meeting starts on time. Go ahead and pause the video now and score this item. Item number 4 is going to continue this same line of thinking. We're now going to look at the ending time of our meetings. And again, using that same 10-minute threshold, we're going to score 0, 1, or 2. A 0 will reflect that our meetings are starting 10 minutes late, more than 10 minutes late. A score of 1 says that a little less than 10 minutes late. And a score of 2 says that we end our meetings right on time. Or, as a team, we agree to extend our meetings a little bit longer. Again, pause your video and score this item for your team. Let's turn to item number 5. This is going to look at the attendance at meetings, with the item stating that team members attend meetings promptly and regularly. You can look at your TIPS meeting minute form to gather data and information about this item, and then look at scoring it as a 0 if 75% of your team members do not attend promptly and regularly. A score of 1 is going to be that team members attend regularly, but they're not always on time and often leave early. And a score of 2 is going to reflect that more than 75% of your team members attend regularly and promptly, and they stay until the meeting has ended. Okay, pause the video and score this item for your team. We're now going to look at item number 6, which asks whether a public agenda format was used to define your topics and then also guide the meeting discussion, and if it was available for everyone to look at during the meeting. Here's an example of one public agenda, the agenda written on a whiteboard. It can also be posted on chart paper, or it could be on a little slip of paper that is available for everyone to be able to see. Again, 0, 1, and 2 for your ratings. A 0 is going to say that a public agenda was not used at all. A score of 1 is going to say that it was not used to define topics, but it was available. And a score of 2 is going to be that it was available and it defined and guided the meeting discussion. Take a moment now and pause the video and score this item. Now we're on to item number 7, which asks whether previous meeting minutes were present and reviewed at the start of the meeting. You can see the first item on the agenda here is to review the previous meeting minutes.
And from our previous meeting minutes, we were going to check on the 6th and 7th grade classroom problems. So how are we doing?
Now let's look at our scoring. A 0 is going to reflect that the previous meeting minutes were not even available or reviewed. A score of 1 is going to mean that the previous meeting minutes were available, but they were not reviewed at the start of the meeting. And a score of 2 is that they were present and reviewed at the start of the meeting. Let's pause the video and score this item for your team. Item number 8 targets our next meeting date. We can look at our TIPS meeting minute form to see if it's already scheduled. A score of 0 will reflect that we don't have a next date and time for our meeting. A score of 1 would say that our next meeting was referred to, but it was not scheduled. So for example, our discussion during the meeting might say that we'll talk about this next meeting or at our next time, but we don't have a date or time for that next meeting. And a score of 2 is going to reflect that our next meeting is scheduled. Go ahead and pause the video and score this item now. Item number 9 talks about sharing the meeting minutes form after the meeting. This can be accomplished just through simply emailing the meeting minutes out to team members, posting to a shared drive, or housing in a cloud. A score of 0 is to reflect that these meeting minutes have not been shared to all team members. A score of 1 will say that they've been shared but not within 24 hours of the meeting. And a score of 2 reflects that meeting minutes are distributed to all team members within 24 hours of the meeting. Once again, go ahead and pause the video and score this item now for your team. We're now going to move on to the subscale for problem solving. This starts with item number 10, which reflects the use of the TIPS meeting minutes form or an equivalent. If you look at your Word document from the TIPS FC, you'll see on page 3 there's a clarification of these items that would reflect equivalent forms of the TIPS meeting minute form. A score of 0 is going to reflect that the team is not using a TIPS meeting minute form or any kind of equivalent. A score of 1 reflects that the team is using part of, but not the complete TIPS meeting minute form. And a score of 2 reflects that the team is using the TIPS meeting minute form or an equivalent. And just as a reminder, there are various ways to get assistance with using the TIPS meeting minute form. We have our TIPS meeting minute guide. We also have resources available on our tips2info.blogspot.com where you have videos you can watch and other types of resources to help work within the table within Word. Okay, please pause the video now and score this item for your team. Next is item number 11. This is the status of all previous solutions was reviewed. For example, all your old problems were discussed and the effectiveness of your solutions was identified. You can find documentation of this on your TIPS meeting minute form. Score 0 if the previous solutions were not reviewed. A 1 if some of those previous solutions and the status of them were reviewed. And a 2 if all your previous solutions were reviewed. Go ahead and pause the video now and score this item for your team. Item 12 targets the use of quantitative data during our problem solving, and it asks whether they were available and reviewed. And score 0 if quantitative data were not available or reviewed. A 1 is if they were available but not reviewed, in other words, just sitting on the table someplace but not used to inform our steps in problem solving. And a score of 2 reflects that quantitative data were reviewed. Again, this is time to pause this video and score this item for your team. Item 13 looks at the problem precision for our problems. And it states that at least one problem is defined with precision. Here's an example of what one may look like that's defined with precision. Who, what, when, where, why, and also how often. You also can look at either your new problem section or your previously defined problem section of your TIPS meeting minute form. A score of 0 is going to say that no problem is defined. A score of 1 will be assigned when at least one problem is defined, but it might lack one of the precision elements in its problem statement. And a score of 2 is going to say that at least one problem is defined with all precision elements. Pause this video now and score this item for your team. We're now going to look at item number 14, which says that all of our documented active problems have a solution tied to them. Again, we can look at our TIPS meeting minute form in either the previously defined problem section or our new problem section to see that we have solutions assigned to each of our problems that we have defined. Score 0 is going to say that we do not have solutions for any of our active problems. A score of 1 is going to say some of our active problems have documented solutions tied to them. And a score of 2 is going to say that all of our documented active problems have solutions assigned to them. This is time now again to pause the video and score this item for your team. We're now going to look at item number 15, which looks at the action plan that you assigned for your solutions. So this states that the full action plan, who is going to do what by when, is documented for at least one solution. Again, look at your TIPS meeting minute form, and you can look either in the previously defined problems or in your new problem section to see whether the who and the by when are completed. Score 0 is going to reflect that no action plan is documented. A score of 1 says the partial plan is documented for at least one solution. And a score of 2 is that a full action plan, the who, what, and by when, is documented for at least one solution. Go ahead and pause the video now again and score this item. Item number 16 talks about solutions having a goal defined. And we remember that the components of a goal is the what and the by when. Again, we can look at our TIPS meeting minute form in either the previously defined problem section or our new problem section to see our goal and timeline. A score of 0 is going to reflect that problems that have solutions do not have a goal defined, or that no solutions are documented. A score of 1 is going to say that some problems have solutions defined that have a goal. And a score of 2 is going to say that problems that have the solutions defined also have a goal identified. Take a moment now and pause the video so you can score this item. Item 17 taps into Fidelity of Implementation Measure, and it asks whether we have a Fidelity measure documented or used for each solution, along with a schedule for how we're going to gather those data. If we think about Fidelity of Implementation, again, remember we're asking that how will we know that we really implement the solutions as we had designed and planned? And again, we can look at our TIPS meeting minute form at either the new problem section or the old problem section to see whether we have Fidelity of Implementation data. A score of 0 is going to say that we have not identified or scheduled any Fidelity measures for our problems. A score of 1 is going to mean that we have Fidelity measures scheduled or defined for some solutions. And then a score of 2 is going to say that we have these identified and scheduled for all solutions. This is your time again to pause the video and score this item for your team. The final item, or number 18, asks whether a student's social academic outcome measure is documented or used for each problem, along with, again, a schedule for how we're going to gather those data. Again, we're answering the question of how do we know if we've reached our goal, if the solution has really worked? What outcome data have we gathered? Again, we can look at our new problem section of our TIPS meeting minute form to find out what data we have identified to use for outcome data and how often we plan on gathering and reviewing that data. We will assign a score of 0 if we don't have a measure or a regular schedule for these outcome data. A score of 1 is going to be that we have some of these scheduled for some of our solutions. And a score of 2 is going to be that we have a measurement and regular schedule for gathering these data for all of our solutions. For our last item now, pause the video and score this item. So how is your team doing? Go ahead now and sum up each of the areas, the 9 items for meeting foundations and the 9 items for the problem solving score. There's a total possible for 18 points in each of these domains. So pause again for a moment as you go ahead and sum those areas. Go ahead and look at your scores now in meeting foundations and problem solving. If you have 15 points or more in each of those areas, you're implementing with Fidelity. If you're not quite there yet, go ahead and review your scores. Any areas you had 0s or 1, you might want to put for an action plan on how you can get to the level that you're implementing Fidelity so that you can have effective and efficient problem solving. Just as a future reference point, you will want to continue to check the health and well-being of your team on a regular schedule, not every meeting, but as often as you feel is necessary to know whether you're reaching your goals of implementing with Fidelity with at least once a year after you have reached that point. Thank you again for all the time and energy that you're putting forth to reaching positive outcomes for our students. If you need additional resources, please don't forget about our website, thetipstoinfo.blogspot.com. We also have videos available on YouTube under Tips to Grant, and we also have our Google community that we have set up so that you can connect with other people who are implementing tips as a problem solution resource. We hope this has been helpful, and please let us know if we can be further assistance.